Hello and welcome. The headline says on elections, Lai welcome US support as China films over poll. I was chaos foreshadows fateful political year. North Korea tests solid fuel missile with hypersonic warhead. US claims downing Houthi missile after Yemen strikes. And island's volcano spews lava onto fishing town. On election matters, Tsai Ing-wen, Taiwan's president, and President-elect William Lai Ching-te have welcomed the backing of the United States for the self-rule island in meetings with a private delegation from Washington amid rage in Beijing at overseas government's congratulations of Taiwan on its weekend poll. On Sunday, the U.S. delegation, including ex-National Security Advisor Stephen Haley and former Deputy Secretary of State James Steinberg, arrived in Taiwan a day after Lai, presently the vice president, won an unprecedented third term for the governing Democratic Progressive Party (DPP). Beijing, which claims Taiwan as its own and has not ruled out the use of force to achieve its aims, has long condemned Lai as a so-called separatist. It cast the election as a choice between peace and war. Lai won 40.1% of the vote compared with 33.5% for Hou Ye-yi of the nationalist Kuomintang KMT party, his closest rival in the event. Lai said freedom and democracy were the most valuable assets for the Taiwanese people and the revered mountains to safeguard Taiwan during his meeting with the delegates on Monday at the DPP headquarters, adding that they were core values shared by both Taiwan and the United States, the foundation for a long-term stability in Taiwan-US partnership. He told the delegation their visit was meaningful and a demonstration of the strength of the partnership between Taiwan and the U.S. Lai will officially take over as president in May 20th. Earlier, the delegation met President Tsai Ing-wen, who was ineligible to run for re-election, having served 2 terms. Taiwan's democracy has set a shining example to the world, Hartley said in a comment released by Tsai's office. We are honored to have the opportunity to meet with you today to reaffirm that the American commitment to Taiwan is solid, principled, and bipartisan, and the U.S. stands with its friends, he added. Your visit is highly meaningful. It fully demonstrates U.S. support for Taiwan's democracy and highlights the close and staunch partnership between Taiwan and the U.S., told the delegates. On election matters again, a fateful election year expected to put the country's institutions to a thrilling test opens on Monday as the first in the nation state shivers under a blast of perishing polar weather. But it's not stopping Donald Trump from telling his voters to go out and caucus even if they are sick as a dog, while urging them to punish enemies he branded cheaters and liars. The ex-president, who left office in January 2021, is seeking a bumper win to set him on the road to a 3rd straight GOP nomination and a possible return to the White House. Nikki Haley, former South Carolina governor, wants a jolt of momentum ahead of next week's New Hampshire primary, her best bet for a shock win over Trump. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is fighting to keep his campaign alive. But after months of polls, multi-million-dollar ad blitz, and a coalition between an election and Trump's legal morass, Iowa's voices are the only ones that matter, although the weather may influence which of them is able to show up. Blizzards and bone-chilling winds forced candidates to cancel several events in the final Iowa stretch. On Sunday, numerous churches in the religious states were closed, but candidates pleaded with supporters to brave the temperatures. On Monday, boastful of the powerful network he lacked when he finished second here in 2016, Trump, who refused to debate his rivals, rejected one-on-one voter contact in the frigid final days. He submitted outbursts outside New York and Washington courts for intimate meets and greets in places like Cedar Rapids, Waterloo, and Sioux City that candidates typically use to butter up Iowa's famously exacting voters. Trump's rivals battle for grip, and not just on the ice-bound roads they journey to reach small crowds in isolated towns. DeSantis suffered the embarrassment of being awarded a participation trophy by a comedian, and Haley faithfully hammered out the same stump speech at all her stops, ignoring former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie's prediction as he folded his own 2024 bid last week that she'd get smoked in the nominating race. Away from election matters, now North Korea said it has tested a latest solid fuel missile fitted with a hypersonic warhead as it continued its attempt to develop more powerful, harder to detect weaponry. On Sunday afternoon, the launch took place and came as Foreign Minister Choi Son-hui headed to Moscow amid anxieties in the United States and elsewhere that Pyongyang was selling weapons to Russia for use in Ukraine in return for Russian technological expertise. Detected by neighboring Japan and South Korea, the launch was designed to test the dependability of new multi-stage high-thrust solid fuel engines and an intermediate-range hypersonic maneuverable controlled warhead, reports said on Monday, adding that the test firing never affected the security of any neighboring country and had nothing to do with the regional situation. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff said in a statement on Sunday the missile flew towards the East Sea, traveling approximately 1,000 kilometers, 221 miles, adding that authorities in Seoul, Washington, D.C. and Tokyo were analyzing the specifications. Japan's defense ministry said its maximum altitude was at least 50 kilometers, 30 miles. North Korea's last missile test was of the Hwasong-18 solid fuel intercontinental ballistic missile ICBM, which it fired into the East Sea on December 18th. On November 11th and in November 14th, it tested new solid fuel engines for an intermediate ballistic missile. Last week, leader Kim Jong-un branded Seoul his principal enemy and cautioned he will not defer to annihilate South Korea. Analysts said the timing of the newest test was a grave concern. Officials have said that the United States military has intercepted a missile fired at one of its vessels by Iran-backed Houthis in the first known attack on U.S. forces by the rebel group since Washington started its newest air raids on Yemen. A U.S. fighter aircraft shot down the anti-ship cruise missile after it was shot from a Houthi-controlled area of Yemen towards the USS Laboon in the Red Sea, the U.S. Central Command CENTCOM said on Sunday. The missile was shot down in vicinity of the coast of Hodeidah by U.S. fire aircraft, CENTCOM said. There were no injuries or damage reported. The attack is the first to be acknowledged by the U.S. since Washington and its allies on Friday commenced launching air and cruise missile strikes on Yemen in reaction to Houthi attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea. The Houthis, which have yet to acknowledge the newest happening, have carried out frequent attacks on cargo ships that the group says are connected to Israel in a show of support for Palestinians under Israeli bombardment in Gaza. At least 26 vessels have been attacked by the Houthis since they seized the Israeli Link Galaxy leader vessel in November. The attacks have forced some of the world's biggest shipping operators to redirect their vessels around the Cape of Good Hope on the southern tip of Africa, cruelly disrupting global trade. Traffic through the Red Sea, which usually eases the movement of $3 billion to $9 billion worth of cargo each day, has plunged by over 40% since the start of the attacks. Houthi spokesman Mohammed Abdulsalam earlier on Sunday accused the U.S. of violating national sovereignty by flying aircraft close to Yemeni airspace and coastal areas, although it is not clear if the two incidents were connected. On natural disaster in Iceland, a volcano has erupted, sending multi-lava flows to the outskirts of a small fishing town and covering homes. On Sunday, no less than 3 houses were set alight as lava reached the edge of the port of Grandavik, according to reports. There were no reports of deaths or injuries, and airline flights were not affected. Iceland's President Gudni Johannesson described the disaster as a black day for his country. No lives are in danger, although infrastructure may be under threat, he said on X. The Icelandic Meteorological Office said the eruption happened just before 8 a.m. local time after local authorities evacuated the 4,000-strong population of the town following a series of small earthquakes. A crack that opened in the ground about 450 meters, 500 yards from Grandavik on Sunday morning had turned into a fissure measuring about 900 meters, 984 yards long as of 6:45 p.m., the Meteorological Office said. At about midday, a second fissure opened on the edge of town, measuring about 100 meters, 109 yards by evening, according to the office. It is the second time the volcano located southwest of the capital, Reykjavik, has erupted in less than a month, and the North Atlantic nation's fifth volcanic eruption in less than 3 years. In November, Grandvik was evacuated after large cracks opened in the earth in advance of an eruption on December 18th. Before Sunday's eruption, emergency workers had been building defensive walls around the town, which residents had returned to on December 22nd, but had not completed work on the barriers. Iceland, home to around 370,000 people and located some 1,300 kilometers, 807 miles northwest of the United Kingdom, is home to over 30 active volcanoes, making the North European island a prime destination for volcano tourism. On more stories, Nauru cuts Taiwan ties, alliance with China. The Pacific Island nation's government said in a statement on Monday that Nauru has cut diplomatic relations with Taiwan and created ties with China in a shock to Taiwan's effort to preserve its decreasing number of diplomatic ties. Taiwan also confirmed diplomatic ties had been severed in a press briefing on Monday, 2 days after Taiwanese voters gave the ruling Democratic Progressive Party (DPP) a historic third term. The election saw Lai Ching-te, the present vice president from the DPP and a loyal defender of Taiwan's sovereignty, become president-elect. Both Lai and his running mate, Taiwan's former top envoy to the United States, Hasayo Kim, were openly hated by Chinese officials. China's ruling Communist Party views Taiwan as its own territory, in spite of having never controlled it, and has added diplomatic pressure on Taipei in recent years by stealing its allies. During the DPP's 8 years in power, Taiwan has lost 10 diplomatic allies to China. Nauru's switch of diplomatic allegiance to Beijing leaves Taiwan with only 12 diplomatic allies, mostly small nations in the Pacific Ocean and Latin America, as well as the Vatican. This is the second time Nauru had cut off diplomatic ties with Taiwan. The Pacific Island country first cut relations in 2002, followed by a resumption in 2005. In African scenes, Zambia battles worst cholera outbreak in a decade. Zambia is grappling one of its worst cholera outbreaks in recent years, as 351 people have died and closely 9,000 active cases have been recorded. Health workers say they are fighting to contain the crunch that has the potential to be the worst the country has since the first in 1977. Relatives of people being treated assembled outside a stadium in the capital Lusaka to wait for information about their loved ones on Friday. President Hakainde Hichilema has admonished people to relocate from towns to villages, as poor sanitation in some densely populated urban areas was a good breeding ground for cholera. The prohibition of funerals and family burials has remained in place. According to the country's health ministry, more emergency rules are being brought. Sylvia Masebo, Zambian health minister, said, according to reports, I've told them that they cannot participate in burials, and I also told them that they cannot have funerals at their homes. I also told the general public not to attend funerals anymore. Cholera is transmitted through the ingestion of contaminated food or water. Professionals have suggested climate change to be responsible for heavy rainfalls, which contaminated drinking water for those living in crowded, poorer areas. On sports, Black Stars fans upset over Ghana's 2-1 AFCON loss. Ghana began its Cote d'Ivoire AFCON campaign on a wrong foot on Sunday. During the opening match of Group B, the Black Stars were stunned 2-1 by Cape Verde. Supporters in Accra couldn't hide their surprise and disappointment. Soon after the fixture kicked off at the State Flex Humphrey Burgny of Abidjan, the weaknesses of Ghana's defense began to show. Cape Verde's Jamiro Montero scored the team's first goal in the 17th minute. By then, Ghanaians were still optimistic. Supporters rejoiced in the front zones when Alexander Djiku equalized in the 56th minute. However, the night will end on a defeat for the Black Stars. The Blue Sharks scored a dramatic stoppage time goal which took them to the top of Group B. Black Stars fans hope their team will do better on Thursday against Egypt, the runner-up of the preceding AFCON edition. The Pharaohs were held to a 2-2 draw against Mozambique on Sunday. Now we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, I'll bring you stories from Nigeria. Stay with us. You're welcome back. Now stories from Nigeria says 7 major marketers approved for Dangote fuel sales. The 7 key oil marketers in Nigeria have registered with the Dangote Petroleum Refinery for the lifting and distribution of refined petroleum product produced by the $20 billion plant. On Sunday, dealers under the aegis of the Major Oil Marketers Association of Nigeria confirmed that with the registration, they will begin the distribution of fuel produced from the facility once the commercial terms are sorted. This came as the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria also said they will meet with the management of the Dangote refinery this week to deliberate terms of product loading. The Petroleum Products Retail Outlets Owners Association of Nigeria similarly stated that Petron had been engaging the management of the multi-billion-dollar refinery for the export of products from the facility. As IPMAN and Petron engaged the refinery, major marketers who are members of MOMAN have already registered with the plant and are getting ready to begin buying products. The 7 major marketers, including 11 PLC, Conoil PLC, Ardova PLC, MRS Oil Nigeria PLC, OVH Energy Marketing Limited, Total Nigeria PLC, and NNPC Retail. The Dangote Petroleum Refinery on Friday announced the inauguration of production of automotive gas oil, also known as diesel, and jet AI, or aviation fuel. Aliko Dangote, the president of the Dangote Group, had in a statement issued by the firm expressed thanks to President Bola Tinubu for his support, encouragement, and thoughtful advice towards the actualization of the project. He also thanked the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited (NNPCL), Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, and Nigerians for their support and belief in the historic project. The refinery, located in Lagos, has so far received 6 million barrels of crude oil at its 2 SPMs located 25 kilometers from the shore. The first crude delivery was done on December 12, 2023, and the 6th cargo was delivered on January 8, 2024. According to the firm, the refinery can load 2,900 trucks a day at its truck loading frameworks. The products from the refinery will conform to Euro V specifications. The Dangote Petroleum Refinery and Petrochemical Project, a subsidiary of Dangote Industries Limited, is a 650,000 barrels per day crude oil refinery located at Dangote Industries Free Zone, Ebeju Lekki, Lagos, Nigeria. The Dangote Petroleum Refinery is an industrial plant that transforms crude oil into various usable petroleum products such as diesel, gasoline, jet fuel, and kerosene. With a capacity to refine 650,000 barrels of crude oil per day, Dangote Petroleum Refinery covers an area of roughly 2,635 hectares in the Lekki Free Trade Zone of Lagos State. And finally, on the news, SERAP urges 70% reduction in 355 billion naira NAS budget. Nigeria's Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has called for a 70% slash to the National Assembly's budget, believed to be excessive and out of touch with the nation's economic realities. SERAP demands a review allocation reflecting fiscal prudence and public accountability. In a strong worded letter addressed to Senate President Godswill Akpabio and Speaker of the House of Representatives Tajuddin Abbas, the bottom of SERAP's argument pivots on the pure magnitude of the proposed 344.85 billion naira budget, a figure exceeding 70% of President Tinubu's original allocation and reportedly the highest ever granted to the legislature. This substantial rise, exceeding 147 billion naira from the proposed figure, has raised eyebrows nationwide, mainly given the present economic crisis. fuel subsidy removal, rising inflation, and a dangerous financial outlook further strengthen the public's anxieties surrounding the legislature's lavish spending plans. Serap contends that prioritizing such lavish allocations while disregarding the dilemma of ordinary Nigerians constitutes a fundamental breach of the constitutional oath of office and betrays the spirit of public service. Transparency and accountability are at the heart of Serap's demands. The group urges quick publication of detailed budget breakdowns, principally for items like the 3 billion naira Senate and House car parks, 12.1 billion naira National Assembly Library takeoff grant, and 3 billion naira book procurement budgets. Beyond individual line items, Serap contests the very philosophy behind the inflated budget. It argues that such extravagance undermines the principles of separation of powers and checks and balances, instead fostering a self-serving culture within the legislature. The letter raises fear about potential abuses of governmental or legislative power veiled within opaque budgetary allocations. Nigerians' right to scrutinize how their representatives spend public funds, especially during trying times, is underscored. Serap recommends a tangible course of action, a 70% reduction in the National Assembly budget, aligning it with President Tinubu's initial proposal. These, they argue, will demonstrate efficient, honest, and legal spending aligned with the public interest. Serap cautions of legal action to compel compliance if their recommendations go unheeded. Furthermore, they demand clarification on several budget items, including the nature of the 8.5 billion naira National Assembly liabilities and the rationale behind allocating 225 million naira to the National Assembly e-library while simultaneously budgeting 3 billion naira for books. The saga of Nigeria's increasing legislative budget has triggered public discourse, reigniting long-standing anxieties about government overreach and fiscal mismanagement. Whether the National Assembly heeds Serap's call for severity and transparency remains to be seen, but one thing is sure, the spotlight on their spending practices is unlikely to dim anytime soon. A recap of major stories says Tsai Lai welcome US support as China fumes over poll. Iowa's chaos foreshadows fateful political year. North Korea tests solid fuel missile with hypersonic warhead. US claims downing Houthi missile after Yemen strikes and Iceland volcano spews lava onto fishing town. And that's all on the news. Have a blessed day and a great week ahead.